the latest mad woke story. I mean, there are so many about. King's College London has been, the report here says they've been forced to apologise. They haven't been forced to apologise. They've chosen to apologise to staff after they sent an email bulletin with a photo of the late Prince Philip in it. Staff complained that the Duke of Edinburgh had a history of racist and sexist comments, and therefore it had been far too traumatic for them to have had that photograph with them. The university's anti-racism community of practice complained about the picture. And now there's been an apology issued for causing the harm to staff members after those complaints. The inclusion of the picture was not intended to commemorate him, they said. Through feedback and subsequent conversations, we've come to realise the harm that it's caused members of our community because his history of racist and sexist comments. We are sorry to have caused this harm. Tom Slater is Deputy Editor of Spiked Online. Tom, should we just start with a deep sigh?
I think we've got to there. I mean, this story really has it all, doesn't it? It sounds like something I made up. It's so insane. Exactly. But this is where we're at the moment. And I think what you really see here is, like so many campus stories, it's both really authoritarian. So this associate director of the library is reportedly being hauled before a kangaroo court made to basically defend herself for sending around this commemorative, simple email. But at the same time, it's just completely pathetic because you've got grown adults, academics, officials at the university saying they were so deeply harmed by this image of one of the long-term patrons of the university, no less, that they needed to be apologised for. It's such an insight into how out of control things have gotten on campus.
But it's the idea that a grown adult, or frankly a child, when seeing a photograph of somebody, would be traumatised by it. Now, I can understand if one had been sexually abused or raped by that person, and someone sent a newsletter around with that picture of that person, that would be personally traumatic to you. But the idea that the man who has been the consort of the Queen for the last goodness knows how many years, who's by her side, who they would have seen on television and newspaper reports and the media for goodness knows how long. How did they get through the week when he died, when he was on the news every single day? Did they all go into hiding and go into therapy, one wonders?
Well, that, as you say, it's so incredibly infantilising, because if you take these people at their word, they are just giant infants. I think if you're that easily upset by a photo of the royal consort, then I don't think you should work at university. You probably shouldn't have a job at all. Maybe don't ever leave the house would be a good idea. But at the same time, as we all know, this is a bit of an act. Do we really think there are people working at King's College London who, went into some sort of panic attack upon seeing that photo? We don't. I think the problem is that this culture of offence-taking is so unhinged and out of hand at the moment, to the point where you see stories like this, because there's just so little common sense pushback against it from within these institutions. So they overstep the mark time and again, and no one calls their bluff when they say things like, "I'm mortally offended by this."
And also this idea that often that someone's words or an image is somehow morally equivalent. I mean, actually not. I mean, just is equivalent to violence. That somehow seeing a picture of somebody is the same as someone coming up and punching you in the face, and it isn't. It just. I mean, it's not a matter of opinion. It isn't.
And everyone knows that. But this is the danger, is that this is the idea in terms of the campus wars more broadly. The idea that speech is violence, the idea that when you take offence to something, you're effectively saying that you've been wounded by this image, by these words, by this opinion, etc. It's really, really dangerous, because first of all, it just becomes a blank check for censorship, because you're effectively stopping someone being in essence harmed. Who wouldn't want to do that? But also, I think, and as we start to see in some places, particularly campuses across the UK,
oh, goodness me, your line's just cut out. I think we've frozen. We've done so well in recent weeks without frozen technology, haven't we? What an absolute shame. I'm sure we'll speak to Tom Slater again very, very soon. Actually, no, we've got him back. Let's just let you finish up, Tom. Got you back.
No problem. Silence myself there by mistake. But yes, I think the danger is, if you say that speech is violence, then violence becomes a justifiable response to it. That's another thing which is going to take place. We start to see that more on American campuses. We've seen it a bit on UK ones, but the more we allow that nonsense to run riot, the idea that words wound, the more we're going to see crazy stories like that.
And the thing about this, of course, this all started on American campuses, and everyone said, "Oh, how ridiculous, how silly! Thank God we don't have it here. Let's ignore it." And then when you complain about it on social media, people say, "Oh, for goodness sake, this is a minority thing." No, it is. It is genuinely. It is causing people to lose their jobs. Ordinary people having to self-censor, people losing their jobs when they don't self-censor. I have no doubt at all, 100%, that I will eventually lose my job here because of my total refusal to self-censor and to refusal to say things that I know are not true. and yet we're required to do it. And it is very devastating. And people who ignore this and think, oh, it's just a bunch of silly students, but when they get into the real world, oh, they'll have a reality check. The trouble is they're bringing that culture, aren't they? The academics are bringing it to the students, who are bringing it to the real world, and now every corporation, every business is stuck with this stuff as well. I mean, at some point, the sane, sensible majority need to stand up and go, nah, we're done with this. You're all mad. We're not playing along anymore.